you guys have ever, men, had furniture to assemble? Furniture to assemble. You know, like a cabinet, a television, you know, cabinet, or you know what I'm saying, computer cabinet. How many of you have ever tried to put it together without looking at the directions first? There you have most men, I mean, I want you to know that I am a direction follower. Why? Because I hate wasting time. And what I hate more than wasting time is having to do something over again because I've jacked it up. Right? Now, I don't mean to make any of you men, ladies jealous, but I am one of the men who asks for directions when I want to go someplace. I will stop and I ask someone, how do you get to such and such a place? And I know, ladies, I know, but I'm married, happily so, and the reason I do that is because I hate being lost. And what I hate more than being lost is all the time wasted driving around trying to figure out how to get where I want to go. I'd rather just ask someone, even a woman. I'd even rather ask. I'm sorry, ladies, I'm just kidding. I did everything I did there. Sorry, Toy. And I'd rather ask, where am I going, so I know how to get there. Gentlemen, parts left over is not because the engineers are done. Parts left over is not a good sign. You see, these guys have gone through a lot of hours of research trying to figure out how to put this all together in a box so that people like you and I can put it together. There is a pattern, there is a way to do things, and there is an assembly design so that when it is assembled, it meets its function. If it's supposed to be a computer cabinet, when you're finished, it's best if it actually serves as a computer cabinet, correct? Not with parts left over. And so, here's the thing that where I'm going with this. The abundant life can only be realized when we live it out as God intends for it to be lived out. When we try to do things on our own without reading the instruction manual, we tend to really mess things up, and there's a lot of stuff left over. And not only is there a lot of stuff left over, there's a lot of things missing. And we end up in a totally different direction than what God intends for us to be. And it happens not only in our personal life, it also happens in the church. And so that's what we're going to be after today as we begin to look forward in a vision. We start looking forward to where do we want FCC to go in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. What is our ambition? Where are we going? Well, first of all, we want to live out as God intends for us to live out. And when we are a church that functions as God intends for a church to function, and we are personally functioning the way that God intends for us to function, it just works better. We're going the right direction, we're doing the right things, and our lives are better, and our church is better when we function as God intends for us to function. Okay, so here is an easy question. How many of you ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Steve Jobs? How many of you have heard of Steve Jobs? How many have not heard of Steve Jobs? How many of you ever heard of Apple? Okay, Steve Jobs is the guy behind Apple. In fact, Steve Jobs says something about vision here. It's very interesting. He says this: if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. So that's the idea about a vision, about where are we going in the next 3 to 5 years if we have the right vision. I don't have to compel anyone, hey, would you do this, would you do that? The vision itself will just kind of pull you in the direction that we need to go. So Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs did not really invent anything. What was his first big invention, by the way? What was he get credit for that he brought in the marketplace? Anybody know his first really big breakout product? Anybody know? It was the iPod. Now, Steve Jobs did not invent that digital data. He did not invent the chip that all of this information is stored on. What he figured out was, if I can store all of these songs and all of this information and put it in a handy little device that you can put in your pocket, and you can listen to thousands of songs at your disposal. You remember the Walkman? Anybody have a Walkman with the cassette tape? And it was only as good as, if you're out trying to do some exercise and you got the cassette tape in, and if you had a really fancy one, it would go backwards on its own. But usually you had to stop and get it out and turn the cassette over and then continue on. Steve Jobs figured out with the digital data that he could put thousands of songs on this little tiny thing that you could put in your pocket, and it was a smashing hit. He didn't invent anything. He just simply applied the information and made the iPod. And it made him a few $1,000s. No, it made him billions of dollars. Billions. Let me ask you another question. Here's one maybe you've not heard of. And this gentleman's name is, it's French, so I'm going to try and get this right. His name is Gaston Plante. Gaston Plante. Anybody heard of him? I was going to give $1 so they heard of that guy. I think my dollar's pretty safe. He is famous for battery. Now, the battery's been around a long time. Benjamin Franklin messed around with batteries, trying to figure out how electricity works in a very crude form. But this guy comes along and he figures out how to recharge a battery. In fact, his invention was so key that we still use it today in car batteries. He figured out that if you reverse electricity going through a battery, it will recharge. And so we use his technology in our car batteries today. But here's what's really cool. Another guy, listen to this name. John B. Goodenough. Legit, that's his name. John B. Goodenough. So, what's your name, Goodenough? Oh, seriously. I really want to know your name. Who's on first? John B. Goodenough. Hey, is it good enough? Yeah, it's good enough. He came up with this idea of what we call the lithium battery. So you're thinking, okay, well, what's the big deal about lithium batteries? Lithium batteries are great because you can make them, no longer do they have to look like this. You can fashion a lithium battery in virtually any shape that you want. That's why they're kind of square when they go into your iPhone, and they're kind of big and rectangular when they go in your weed eater. And they can be small, like what goes into one of these has a lithium battery in it. So a lithium battery is different because it's no longer shaped like this. It can be whatever shape that you want it to be. And that technology has really revolutionized the things that we carry around. But once again, it's not the information, it's the application. You see, we can have a lot of information. We had batteries around for 250 years, but it wasn't until somebody figured out a really clever application of a battery that has impacted everybody's life. Now we have it in our laptops, and we have it in our iPhones, and we have it in virtually everything that we recharge around the house has a little lithium battery in it. You see, we can have a lot of information, but God does not intend for us to have a lot of information. God intends us to have application to our information. Many Christians can have a lot of information in their lives. We can quote a book, a chapter, and verse. But until that is applied to our lives, it really serves no practical purposes. About 4 years ago, we started out here, and I began to preach to you and teach to you the book of John. And I was very passionate about teaching who Jesus is. Because sometimes we take Jesus and we make him a religious figure, and we transform him into something that he really is not. And so we tried over these last few years to re-educate ourselves who Jesus really is. That he's just not a religious figure. That he's much, much more than that. Like Roland was talking about, he's more than just Savior, he's also Lord. And all authority and all power has been put under his feet, but yet at the same time, he's very approachable. He came down to be one of us. He was flesh and blood. And so I gave you a lot of information. And that information was, I think, useful. And then about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I started a series called Thrive, a practical guide to the abundant life. That really began to reshape my thinking. You see, preaching can be done 3 ways. Number one, preaching can be, the Bible is used to teach people. So we use the Bible to people, to teach the Bible to people. A second way of preaching would be to teach people the Bible. And they're very different. If I want to teach the Bible to people, the emphasis is on the Bible. And whether it's dry or whether it's interesting really doesn't matter. My responsibility then would be, if that is my way of teaching, that all I preach about and teach about is this. But then there's another way, and that is to teach people the Bible. In other words, I make it very personal. And I have creative stories, and I have very interesting words, and we sit back and we have all of this great knowledge about the Bible. But there is a third way. And it's the way that I have been missing out on in the last few years, and it is simply this. And this is according to, I want to give Andy Stanley the credit for this. He says this: the goal of preaching should be to teach the Bible to people how to live a life that reflects the values and principles and truths of the Bible. Let me repeat that. The goal of preaching should be to teach the people how to live a life that reflects the values, principles, and truths of the Bible.
Amen.
You see, the information in the Bible is only good when it's applied and I treat my wife better. The information in the Bible is only good when I learn to love my neighbor as myself. The information of the Bible is only good if I learn to be kind and compassionate and merciful and honest and generous. If I might apply the information of the Bible into my life, I'm kind of like that digital chip. That it can store a lot of information, but it's really useless until it's applied. And so where we want to go over the next few years is begin to learn how to apply the Bible into every day of our lives. Every day of my life. There's somehow, some way I can take the teachings of Jesus and make them apply to my life. And here's what's going to happen. When we do this successfully, your life is going to get a lot better. And when we do this successfully, the church is going to get a lot better. Because we're not designed to just be storehouses of information. We're designed to live out what God has given to us through the teachings of Jesus and through the teachings of the apostles. When those things are applied to our lives will get much, much better. It's kind of like that 57 Chevy that's found out in the field. You know, some guy drives down the road and he sees a 57 Chevy off in the field. And he goes and he says to the farmer, "Hey, how much for that car out there?" And the guy says, $5 you can have it. So he can't get it into his pocket fast enough. And he drags it home. And he goes onto YouTube and he begins to watch all kinds of videos on how to restore a 57 Chevy. And he watches video after video after video, and he goes to the library and he gets manuals how to restore a 57 Chevy. And he picks out the color he wants, and he picks out the wheels that he wants, and the car just sits, and it sits, and it sits. He has all the information. He's watched all the YouTube videos. He has all the manuals. But until he begins to restore that 57 Chevy, all of that information is just information. You see the word salvation? Our closest word to that is the word salvage. God intends to do something with our lives. He intends to salvage us. To save us is not what He intends. He intends to rebuild our lives, to take all the information that He has for us that is found in this book, and to repurpose our lives and make it as He intends for it to function. So that's what all of our teaching going forward is going to be, is going to how to apply the Bible to our lives. And so why don't we dig in this morning with that very same idea, and let's talk about some things. Book of Matthew, the 5th chapter, Jesus gives some instruction to us. And he says in this Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, "You are the salt of the earth. But what is good is salt if it's lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? No, you can't make it salty again. What's going to happen to it? It's going to be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless." Now, if you go to a restaurant, what's your favorite restaurant? Somebody give me your favorite restaurant. What's some of your favorite restaurants? Cracker Barrel? Maggiano's? Portillo's? Top Notch? I've never heard of a Red Lobster. What do you, Texas Roadhouse? What do you find at almost every restaurant, on the table of every restaurant that you go to? Salt and pepper, right? So let's suppose for a moment that you go to Texas Roadhouse, since everybody is familiar with Texas Roadhouse. And so you order your meal and you decide, I'd like to have some fries with my ribeye. And so they bring out the ribeye and they bring out the fries, and you reach for your salt shaker. Now, what do you expect to come out of your salt shaker? Salt, right? Well, let's suppose that somebody has tampered with your salt shaker, and you pour that all over your French fries, and you take a bite, and it tastes like something that would be in a baby's diaper. I say graphically because I want to make a point. That is not what you're expecting. Right? Yeah, pumpkin, exactly. It tastes like pumpkin. Same thing. And so you pour this on your French fries, and now they taste like pumpkin. So not only is the salt not what you thought it was going to be, your fries are now ruined. So this has to be thrown out. But what else has to be thrown out? The fries. Right? Because what was intended to happen did not happen, and everything was ruined. You see, that's what Jesus is saying here. I gave you these teachings with a purpose. And the purpose of what I've given to you is so that when it's applied to your life, not only is your life salty, not only is your life a lot better, but when other people around you observe your life, they say, wow, I want what they want. And Jesus gives us a very firm warning here. If we don't apply His teachings to our lives, not only does it not affect our lives and ruin our lives, but everybody's life that we are going to be an example to, it's ruined. God positioned the country of Israel just so. And if you look at the ancient world, you see that Israel would sit right up off the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. And in the ancient world, Egypt was a major power, and modern-day Turkey, which is on the north side of the Mediterranean, was a huge power, and Mesopotamia, which was on the east side of Israel, was a major power. And so all of the trades were supposed to go through Israel. And Israel was positioned in such a way that all of the nations, even though it was this tiny little nation, all of the nations of the earth knew of Israel, because they had to pass through there. If you wanted to get from Turkey to Egypt, you went through Israel. If you wanted to get from Egypt to modern-day Iraq, you had to go through Israel. You couldn't go through the desert. You had to go up through Israel and then across. This little tiny nation was to influence the entire world on how God blessed them. They were going to be the example. They were going to be the token. They were going to be the salt that told the whole world, when you worship this God, look how blessed you get. You remember that land was promised to them, and they were going to take over this land, and this land was inhabited by people who worshipped idols. And the promise to Abraham and to all of his descendants was, you're going to go into this land. And when you go into this land, I'm going to bless you. You're going to live in houses that you didn't build. You're going to reap in vineyards that you didn't plant. I'm going to bless you. Why was he going to do that? So that this little nation could be an example to all the nations of the world. This is what happens when you follow Yahweh God. They don't have any type of army. But we don't invade them. Why? Well, what God are they worshiping? I don't know, somebody named Yahweh, I think is who it is. Well, what idol does it look like? Well, they don't have idols. Well, how do they sacrifice? Well, they don't sacrifice children, they just sacrifice cattle. Look how blessed they are. But what happened? They forsake the living God and started worshiping fake gods. And all that God had intended for them was lost because they did not apply to their lives the teaching that God gave them. You see, we're salt, not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of those around us. Salt was so valuable that in this day that salt was used as money. How much for that doggy in the window? Well, that would be 3 denarii and 2 tablespoons of salt. How about 1 tablespoon of salt and 4 denarii? Sold. That's how they traded things. They traded things with salt because it was so valuable. So Jesus used an everyday illustration. Salt, you're the salt of the earth. It's very, very valuable. But when it loses its saltiness, you can't give it away. It's useless. It's thrown out. So in our lives that reflect the teachings of Jesus, not been applied to our lives. We just come to church on Sunday morning. We sing a few songs. We throw a few bucks in the envelopes and throw in the offering plate. But if our lives are not transformed and changed, we're not doing ourselves any good. We're not doing the world around us any good. And then Jesus says something else. He says this. He says, you're the light of the world. City on a hilltop cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts under a basket. In the old world, they didn't have lighters. If they wanted to light a candle, they just couldn't go and get out a little matchbox from Diamond, and they couldn't just light it up and just light a candle. Look how easy that is. And if I was to burn these all up accidentally, I'd just go to the store and buy some new ones. But the old world, when Jesus was here, candles were very hard to come by. You just didn't light a match and start it. Light was very hard to come by. So when you finally had a light in your house, you wouldn't take that lamp and that light and cover it up so nobody could see it. You get a light out so that you can read. You get a light out so you don't stub your toes. You get a light out so that you can do things around the house. And this light was very, very precious, and you just didn't blow it out. Once it was lit, you tried to keep it lit as long as you could. And you invited neighbors over. Hey, I got light tonight. Jesus says, listen, you're that light of the world. I've given you the responsibility of being the light. We are so desperate need of light right now. Look at the world around us. The world needs is the light of Jesus, and we are that light. No, he says instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. Listen to what he says here. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your Heavenly Father. Why are we going to really focus on application for the next few years, the application of Scripture into our lives? So that others can see the glory of God working in our lives. I was going to have Shelley give a testimony about her ministry. And I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Why don't you come up and tell us a little bit about the ministry that's going on? And Shelley is taking care of something else right now. But this is Glenn. Everybody say, hey, Glenn. Hey, Glenn. Tell us a little bit. I'm going to give you a microphone here so people can hear you. Tell them about the ministry.
Okay.
Oh, Shelley's here. Okay. Sorry, Glenn. Say hello, Shelley.
Hi. But yeah, so some of you know me. I'm Shelley or Michelle. Doesn't really matter. I go by both. My family and I have been doing a clothing ministry for about 4 years. And we help people that are like in the surrounding communities. I live in Stager, so it's kind of like Stager. Okay. Yeah, so we help people that are in the surrounding communities, so like Stager, Chicago Heights, Sauk Village, Dyer, stuff like that, and then the surrounding communities of the church. We give out clothes to families in need. Some of them are like fire victims or they're just kind of like in a hard time. So we've been doing that for about 4 years. Dyer decided to pick us up and gave us a place to put all the clothes. We've been working on the room back in the gym. So if you ever want to come look at what we've been doing, it's actually pretty clean back there now and organized, so it looks pretty good. We were hoping to kind of have like an open house type thing maybe next week after church, if that's okay. And then one of the stories that kind of stuck out to me most was like my second family that I helped. It was a fire story. They had a fire in their house and it was destroyed. The whole house was destroyed. And they needed like clothes and furniture and a place to live. So we were able to get the clothes for the family. And then we had a spaghetti dinner to help them financially and also to collect bigger pieces of furniture. So.
Salt, light, right? She sees a need. In her house, she has, from my understanding, had clothes from one in the house to the other. People come into their house. So what can we do? Well, we can give you a place where you can store those clothing and also participate in that. The Methodist Church just down the street, they run a tremendous food program. You see, that's what they do really well. So it makes sense for us to not start one to compete with them. It makes sense for us to say, listen, how can we help? It's a whole different way of thinking. You see, here's the thing. Being salt, being light, it gets really uncomfortable. It stretches us. When we apply the teachings of Jesus to our lives, we get stretched. But what comes out of that is God gets the glory. That's what we want. So in the coming days, I'm excited about what God is going to do here. This is just sermon one of the vision. Next week, we're going to be talking more about vision. But I really want to see in our lives the impact of the teachings of Jesus in such a powerful way. Not only are we transformed, but everybody wants what we have. Let's stand. Father, you gave us these things not to just give us information. You gave us the Bible not just to give us something to read at night, to put us to sleep so that we can get a good night's sleep. You gave us these things so that we can be transformed by the power of your Spirit, working with the words that you've given to us. So as we strive and endeavor and work to become what you want us to become. Help us to be moldable. Help us to be pliable. Help us to be the clay that you can mold into what you want us to be molded into. Help us to never be complacent with who we are, but help us to trust in what you're going to do with us. Thank you for your grace that makes this all possible. Thank you for your love for us that cleared the way for you to come and transform us. We just ask all of these things and proclaim all of these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Before we dismiss, I want to give you the blessing that comes from the book of Numbers, the 6th chapter. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. God bless.